Welcome back to the Squawka Talker Podcast. We're moving on to midfield, or more specifically, DMC, Defensive Central Midfield. James, I'm going to go to you first on this because there's huge amounts of interest surrounding this particular position because it's two current England internationals that are on the list, albeit a long list of players that Manchester United could be tracking. Calvin Phillips from Leeds United and Declan Rice from West Ham. Now, Calvin Phillips, due to his injury problems this season, his stats are a little bit distorted based on current numbers. He's probably rated at around £50 million, whereas Declan Rice, if you believe what some papers are reporting, it could be in excess of 100. Phillips is a specialist as a single pivot, particularly under Marcelo Bielsa. We're yet to see completely how Jesse Marsch is going to deploy him, whereas Declan Rice's role has changed this season. There's been so much talk about him being a natural holding midfielder, particularly if he was to move to United. But this season, that has changed. So Phillips' main thing is being a central ball winner. And if we look at the back end of last season, he was in the top 5 for key passing progressions through the middle third of the pitch, tackles won, defensive third tackles, and they were all better than what Manchester United's current DMC options are doing. Rice's slightly altered role has unlocked a new level to him this season. So he can play as a 6, he can play as an 8. And some of the numbers are quite impressive. He's 4th for passes into the final third in the Premier League this season with 210. He's 6th for tackles won at 53. And he's joint top for interceptions with 88. And 3rd for final third carries with 86. So this shows a real maturity to Rice's game, that he can do a bit of everything. He can make an impact in different areas of the pitch. But he would cost a phenomenal amount of money, whereas Calvin Phillips could trigger a civil war.
There's two ways of looking at this. So, in my mind's eye, and I think in the probably I would imagine most Manchester United fans feel this way when they think about a Manchester United midfielder. Declan Rice fits that perfectly, and when I say that he fits it perfectly. But they haven't had a midfielder like that for well over a decade. They've not had a midfielder like that since Roy Keane. I don't think he's Roy Keane, but I think Declan Rice can be the absolute all-round box-to-box midfielder, do everything. And that is what United fans love. They love someone who can absolutely just boss the middle of the pitch. And whenever they talk about their dream midfielders, it is Roy Keane, it is Ibrahim Sangari. It's that type of player. And I think Declan Rice is that sort of just heroic figure who can do that. Bigger, stronger than everyone, quicker than everyone, all those sort of things. And that's what United fans love and what they envisage when they think of a central midfielder. And I think it's been a real disappointment to them that they've never replaced Roy Keane. And a few times I thought they might. They thought Owen Hargreaves could have been it, and Owen Hargreaves might have been, but for his injuries. But they've just never had that absolute box-to-box bossing midfielder. So Declan Rice could be that. And if it costs £150 million to do that, if he could be that sort of hero, that icon, the player on which they can build a revolution, then that's not too much money to my mind. And I know, it's massively different figures, but Roy Keane was a British record when they signed him. And they signed Michael Carrick for, 18 million. People thought that was crazy. For quality players, no one talks about those fees afterwards. Now, I mentioned Michael Carrick because he was never a Roy Keane type. He wore his shirt, but he was never a Roy Keane type. And I think that always kind of disappointed United fans. But you can't underestimate what a wonderful player he was for them and how crucial he was. And that's where I think a Calvin Phillips could maybe be that. And maybe that is also just a bit more emblematic of modern day football. That maybe, all right, he's not as dynamic as Declan Rice, not as dynamic as a Keane, I keep mentioning. But I remember Fergie absolutely adored Michael Carrick, and the main reason was he said he just always played the ball forward. And it sounds very simple, but too many midfielders play the ball sideways or backwards. It's safe. And Michael Carrick, it was always forward, looking to probe and hurt and push the opposition back. I actually think Calvin Phillips can be a bit too sideways in his playing, particularly for England, where I've watched him most. So I think he would need to improve on that. But, that might be down to the England manager that's maybe a bit more cautious. I would want to see him taking control of games more than I think he does for England. He's had his moments, don't get me wrong, but I'd want to see him doing that more if he came to United. But if it was down to me and there was a choice, it would be go out and get Declan Rice. I wrote a piece about this week, actually, that this summer is probably United's best chance of getting him. Not in the sense that West Ham say they're just not going to sell him, and they've told Rice we will reject all offers. Whenever you hear those sort of things, you've got to put it to the test. But it's the fact that Man City like him, but Man City are going to spend a lot of money on Erling Haaland, not on the transfer fee, but that package is going to be enormous. Do they then go and spend 150 million? I don't think so. Personally, Chelsea, long-time admirers of him, but they've got to sign 2 top-class centre-backs this summer. That's going to take up the best part of 100 million. Do they then have that sort of money to spend 150 in midfield? I don't think so either. So this could be United's best chance to do it. And what a statement signing it would be.
Yeah, you know what as well? What you're describing there, James, is what they need both of them. If we're being perfectly honest, like they need a central midfielder. I mean, this is the thing. We've got central midfielder and defensive midfielder on this list today, and Rice should be the central midfielder, and Phillips should be the defensive midfielder. They need both of them. Phillips, Rice, and Bruno Fernandes is a hell of a midfield. That's a hell of a midfield. But I agree with you. I think ultimately money is United make enough money that they can afford to buy someone like Declan Rice. Right? If the Glazers forego their annual dividends, they could literally do it because I'm pretty sure their dividends are about 150 million. So you just don't get paid for a year, the Glazers, and United can afford to buy Declan Rice and spend 150 million on other players as well. So there's definitely a chance there, and I agree. I think Declan Rice is a fantastic, but I'll touch on him more in a second because I think he's more suited to central midfield. Defensive midfield, I agree. Calvin Phillips is really good, but the thing is, and I don't know if you've ever done this before, I've mentioned Calvin Phillips going to Man United on Twitter a few times. Leeds fans do not like that when you do it. They do not like that. And they let you know about it. They really let you know about it. And I didn't think I thought I was being indefensive. I was saying, he's such a good player, Man United should buy him. And they they started talking to me like I had committed some cardinal sins. So, and that's just the fans. He is very Leeds. He loves Leeds, boyhood club. So I don't, and he's never spoken about wanting to move elsewhere either. He seems very content to stay at his boyhood club. So I don't necessarily think that's really on. Even if Leeds would deal with United, which who knows if they would, I don't think Phillips would ever push for it. I don't think he'd even maybe even accept it, frankly. So I think he ruled Phillips out, but that's okay because I think there's a better player out there anyway. Ibrahim Sangari at PSV. There's 2 options. Ibrahim Sangari at PSV and Aurelien Tchouameni at Monaco, who are both sensational holding midfielders. Tchouameni is probably the better talent, but he's also being courted by Liverpool and Real Madrid. And as things stand right now, if you had choice between Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Man United, you're not picking Man United. Being realistic about it, let's be honest. So Sangare is less courted for some reason. I don't know why. And he's just phenomenal. And you look at the pivot that Ajax have right now, Edson Alvarez, right? He's really solid, really high, ranks high for ball recoveries, touches, interceptions made, duels won. He's a defensive machine, and ranks very highly for forward passes. Just like you said about Carrick, always puts the ball forward. Alvarez does that too. Do you know who does it more than Alvarez? Ibrahim Sangari. In fact, if you look at their passing radars, it's literally like Sangari is just Alvarez, but better. Everything that Alvarez has done over the last 2 years, since the start of 2020 in the Eredivisie, all of his stats, all of his stats collated into a radar. You look at it; it looks really good. And then Sangari's is just Alvarez's radar, but bigger. He's better at everything. Like this kid is sensational. No one's talking about him. He's Ivorian international. No one's talking about him. I can't imagine he'll cost that much money. He's PSV. I think he's a steal waiting to happen. He's got more tackles and interceptions than anyone in the Eredivisie this season. He's 4th for possessions won in the attacking third as well, which means he can push up and press. Right, he's got 26 possessions won in the attacking third. He's high usage player. Only one player has attempted and completed more passes than him in the Eredivisie. He's absolutely made to play this number 6 role in the Premier League for Man United. He's got the physical capabilities to handle it. He's got the technical capabilities to handle it. He could be a transformative signing at the base of that midfield. And I don't think he'd cost a lot of money either. And United need a 6. And he recently beat Ten Hag in the Dutch Cup final with PSV. So Ten Hag will know all about him. So yeah, for me, that's the guy. You go and get Sangare, defensive midfield, and then you can come back and address the Basmati Busquets, the Pilar Perlo in central midfield.
I get frustrated when over the past year when I've heard United fans go on about a holding midfielder. I've got to say, because United fans want the best player in every position. That's the only way they're going to win the title, apparently, which of course is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
But I get particularly frustrated with that position, and maybe I'm being disrespectful to that position, but I genuinely think it's the easiest position to play on the pitch. And I think the failure to get Fred to have been effective there, or to get McTominay to have been effective there, it really does not look good on Solskjaer, and even Fred's improved under Ranić, you have to say. But I remember back in the day when Phil Neville was converted from a fullback to a very useful holding midfielder. I remember one game he pretty much silenced Patrick Vieira in a game at Old Trafford. That is a job that relies on discipline, and Fred is a technically gifted footballer as well. McTominay is a very athletic footballer. That relies on discipline. So if you as a coach cannot get a player to be disciplined in that position, or I'm not saying they're going to be, let's say, Makaleli. That's not necessarily the case. But if you can't get a professional athlete who's good enough to play for Manchester United in the first place to be an effective holding midfielder, I think that says more about you than them as a coach. So that has frustrated me over this time. I thought that the midfield, all right, Pogba, it just has not worked out for him, and no United managers managed to get the best role for him. But I thought Pogba, Fernandes, and McTominay or Fred as a holding midfielder, I think that should have been a good enough midfield for United to properly compete.
So I would respectfully disagree about holding midfielder. I think in the modern game, when Phil Neville, when he played back in the day, yeah, it wasn't. But since the Guardiola revolution 2008, I think holding midfield has evolved, and it's now such a more complex position. And you look at the importance of it. And part of the reason why Pogba has only ever really played well for Man United consistently in left wing is because if you look at when he gets the ball in his left wing, he gets the ball in that half space between the opponent's midfield and defence, in that left half space. And that's where attacking midfielders should get the ball. Like playing midfield. Like he should be able to play midfield 3 and get the ball there. But he can't because Man United, like you said, never had a holding midfielder that actually Fred, McTominay, whoever it is, Schneiderlin they had for a while. They've never had a holding midfielder that can accurately play that position and pass the ball forward since Michael Carrick. They had Schweinsteiger for a while, but injuries really limited his impact. So that's it, and that's the position. So the reason Pogba has failed at United ultimately is because the midfield has never been set up to get the best out of him, and so the managers have just crammed him in different roles, different positions, and he's by nature an inconsistent player anyway. And so these issues just exacerbated the issues that are already there, and that's why we struggle to see the best of Paul Pogba. I think getting a holding midfielder that can play the game to a high level is very difficult in this modern age, and especially so when you need it to complete your midfield. But now Pogba's going to leave Man United probably, so they can maybe be a bit more of a punt on the role, which I think Sangari is a great fit. But then of course you need to get the central midfield right because you need 2 midfielders to go with Bruno Fernandes.